survey by Willis Towers Watson finds 32% of employers in the U.S. will only require employees to get vaccinated if courts uphold OSHA's shot or test mandate. The federal mandate, which would require employers with 100 or more employees to verify workers are vaccinated against COVID or submit to at least weekly testing, faces numerous legal challenges. Insight about the reasons for resistance from Paul Siegert, managing partner at PCS Advisers. Paul, take us through it.
Well, it's a really interesting story. Before the presidential mandate or the OSHA route was announced, 85% of employers were telling us they had plans to implement a policy of some sort, a vaccine mandate of some sort, by the end of this year. And then when that was announced, in all the time that it took to get that interpreted and released from OSHA, a lot of employers put that on hold because they didn't want to put in their own policy and then have to go back to the drawing board and redo it and invest in it twice and so on. And now we're at a place where only 57% are planning to require or have a vaccination policy. That's 18% currently, and 32% that will only do it if the OSHA ruling survives court challenges, which doesn't look terribly likely, and then 7% will do it either way. So we've gone from 85 down to 57, but that 57 includes 32 that probably won't end up doing it in the end because of the challenges that the OSHA mandate's getting in the courts.
Wasn't this the cover that some companies initially wanted?
It did seem like it, yeah. But then I think in the length of time it took to get through the interpretation, that changed. And we have 1 in 3 that are very concerned that it will impact them from a staffing perspective. We're in the middle of this great resignation that plays into it. Yeah. And you have, on the one end of the spectrum, you've got a large airline with 67,000 employees that can afford to fire 500 people. Right. On the low end of the spectrum, when you have 150 employees and 3 or 4 or 5 really key skilled employees tell you that they're not going to do it, that's a whole different ballgame.
I was just going to ask you, is there a difference in terms of how a small business versus a big business responds to this?
Absolutely. I mean, there's greater fear around losing key employees. The cost of administering this and maintaining it and tracking it and implementing it, the liability if that's not done appropriately. They're already stretched thin. The companies at the smaller end of the scale tend to have, skeleton crew and HR, and this is a significant thing to add. And then you think about the cost. If you're going to provide testing weekly and you don't want to charge your employees because you're already fear losing employees, those tests could be anywhere from $20 or $30 for the less expensive versions to, say, $120 times however many people need to do that each week. Right. It's not a small expense.
We're speaking with Paul Siegert, managing partner at PCS Advisers, the benefits consulting firm. We're talking about this new survey that finds 32% of employers will only require their employees to get vaccinated if the courts uphold OSHA's rule. It seems like it comes down to fatigue of some kind, employee fatigue, on top of then being told by the federal government what to do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the 32% that will only do it if OSHA stands are part of the 57 that might end up doing it. So that leaves 43 that are not in the do it or might do it crowd. And 1 in 3 employers already report that they've discontinued any COVID policies. They're back to normal. They're not any longer doing any pandemic type of response because they are, as you say, they've reached a point of fatigue with the whole thing.
And they've watched the political pushback, I'm sure. Generally speaking, does the business owner feel like, hey, my shop, my rules?
Many do. And I think they have the cover of a lot of confusion from how political this has become and all the different court rulings that are coming out and the stays that are being put in place on almost a daily basis. The landscape changes. And that's a lot to wade through as an employer, which really does explain why that 85% who said they would have a policy has dropped so dramatically. Confusion is not what the market wants.
All right, thanks, Paul. Paul Siegert, managing partner at PCS Advisers.